Well, hello garden friends. I'm outside because it's a beautiful day. It is still spring in Iowa, which means I can get some spring projects done. And today is going to be all about those spring projects. One of them is really fun, and it's going to be placing a really cool antique urn in my garden as a focal point. If you followed me for a while, or if you're new or don't know, I happen to love antique relics in the garden. I love architectural salvage pieces. I love stone pieces, terracotta pieces, anything that has structure and just can become this amazing focal point. I live out in the middle of farm fields in Iowa, and that means I need things that stop the eye and give your eye a moment to rest in the garden before it just sees the horizon that seems to go on forever. I want points in my garden that really stop you. So that's what this is gonna be. I'm gonna also maybe tear apart some drip line that I installed completely wrong last year in a really dry and hot time of year. And before everything comes up and fleshes out again, I'd like to install it correctly, and I thought we could do that together. And then maybe a couple other things. I haven't even given my yard a cut yet, and you can see I have trimmings here that I'm just gonna cut up with the mower. I mulch things like boxwood. If I trim any dead out of it or give anything a trim, I put it on my yard and I pick that up. So we may do a little bit of yard maintenance, we'll see, but let's get started. So here's the area. It doesn't look like much now, but what we have are my vegetable gardens beyond with some raised beds. This is kind of close to a more formal patio area I have. That's a gravel patio where my fire pit is. And I have this urn that I recently got, and I just love it. So this is the bottom piece. There's two more pieces. It has a middle section and then a top decorative lid. So all together, it is just this gorgeous urn. And what I kind of like about it is, and what I like about pieces like this, they make a garden feel like it's been there. It makes it feel like there's a story, like there's age to it, that there's history in it. And with a lid, I'm not gonna plant anything in it. So you don't even have to water it, it just sits there. But what I do wanna do is prepare the area. Now, one time I had a tree planted here and I moved it. So this area, it needs some leveling. So I have a piece of cement that is the same size as the base of the urn, and I want to put a nice layer of some small chips or gravel chips under it. So these are mostly 3/8 inch contractor chips is what they're called. And this is going to be nice because it's going to help me level that piece of cement better since it's a little uneven. So what I'm going to start by doing is taking a spade. We're going to cut around to make sure I get the sod out and take a little bit of the soil out before I backfill it with some rock. So you can see what I did first was cut around it with a spade, and this is where I had a different urn sitting last year, so there's really not too much sod or grass I need to take out. But the reason I want to take all that out is grass and soil, it settles over time, it changes when it's wet, and it's not a solid base for something like a heavy urn or any heavy structure. So what I want to do is make sure I take that out, and I will be taking some of the soil with it, because what I want to do then is be able to make a nice layer of that rock underneath. So I'm just taking my spade to lift it. You know, I pretty much do the same process if I'm gonna put a new flower bed in and want to remove grass or just extend a flower bed, which I do often. So what I wanna do is just finish removing all of this grass and these little pieces. I'm gonna be honest, I save these and I plant them in places in my yard where I may need them. So I don't actually just throw them out. I save them because it's nice grass. I've never planted any of this grass. This farm area has been in my family. So this yard has been here for years. So I save though when there's good grass and plant it in. But you can see how quickly, and a good spade will always make quick work of this, that I'm just making a nice square right where I made that cut mark all around it. And what this will do is now expose my perfect surface area. Now, to find the right spot and the right placement, I put up a string line from this gravel patio that I wanted and my sight lines to make sure this was gonna be in the center. Because after going to all this work, you don't wanna get up and think, that could have been a couple inches one way or the other. No, you want it exactly where you want it. So you can see here, I've gotten just a few inches, about 4 inches of soil taken out. You don't need to go super deep. This isn't for a cement footing. This isn't to build even a patio. This is just for one piece. And it's more so I can easily level the area. And it just really simply is removing a little bit of that soil. So now what I'm gonna do, because I want this cement too to stick out just a little bit. That way, if I wanna use a trimmers around it, like a string trimmers or something, I'm not hitting the urn. It will only hit this, which I won't care as much. I want it to be just slightly, this ground isn't even perfectly level. It starts to taper off. So it won't be hidden per se, but that's okay because I don't want anything to ever hit this urn. I want that to be protected. So what I'm gonna do is start putting some gravel in and raise it up a few inches until I can put the cement on. So now what I'll do, since this rock is in place, I will actually start now checking to see the level I want for the cement. Now you could tamp this down with a tamper, and that's what I'd do again if I was doing more of like a patio type area. This is such a small area, I'm not worried. So instead what I'm gonna do is start checking if I'm at the level I want and if it's gonna sit how I want it to, so I can start working on leveling it out. So I'm just gonna take this, set it right down, and I can already see it's probably not level, but I did bring a level with me, because that's really the only way we're gonna know, is if we can put it on here and actually let it rest on its own. So I can see that this end, the north end for me, needs to come up a little bit. And if I go now east to west, the east end needs to. So I'm gonna keep messing with that until I can get it perfectly level. So when I set this urn on it, it will stay level. That's all it takes, just to make sure things look good for years and you don't have to redo them. So I've checked my cement now and it's level. So now I wanna move the bottom piece of the urn onto it, and we're gonna check it with that first piece. Because, you know, if the cement itself on the top isn't as level, or if just something with the urn is uneven, I wanna be able to adjust that now before I put the whole thing there. So the bottom piece I can easily set there on my own. I'm just gonna bring it over, set it in place. It really fits on that piece just perfectly, which I really love. I think it's gonna look really good here too. Now it's gonna need a light when I'm done. I'm just gonna say it, eventually I'll want a light, but let's check that levelness. And now I even like to eyeball it myself too, because I don't want it to be off. We're looking just about perfect. So I may have to have some help to get the top piece on, but this is gonna be good when it's done. I'll finish the urn up here in a little bit when I can have help to make sure I move the top on properly, and we'll look at that all done here when I'm at the end of the day. But what I'm gonna do now is work here on the back of the shed at some drip line. So drip line is something I really had never used. You know, where I lived in Iowa, most of the time growing up, while we had dry times, even droughts on certain years, it wasn't as much of a reoccurring issue as it is now. And now I go through such dry spells in the summer with some of my plantings that I really want to make sure I protect them. I protect that investment of the plants. And so last year I started trying to use some drip line on some really established arborvitaes. That has worked so well. On my limelight hydrangeas that are right beside some woodward arborvitaes, which are more of a shrub arborvitae. But also on the back of my shed where I have, you can see green mountain boxwood. I have lots of perennials that are a little bit more susceptible to, some of them do really well in dry weather and some of them don't. So I wanna make sure I have drip line, but I did not properly put it in last year, and I wanna show you why. Here's the back of my shed. It looks pretty drab right now because everything is just beginning to come up. We have, you know, pockets of allium and betony and different types of herbaceous peonies. We have some tree peonies. We have some more spring blooming allium. We have all different types of things back here. And what's nice is, this is the perfect time to work on something like drip line because nothing is fully growing yet. So I have room to move in the bed. Now, if you look at my drip line, you're gonna see the issue probably right away. I twisted it and curved it in way too much, and it caused kinks. It didn't work well. It was really trying to make it do something it can't do. So I'm gonna actually remove all of this out into the yard. We're gonna put one long line in the back, and then we're gonna run down what we need to the different areas off of that main line, as opposed to trying to twist it and turn it and curve it as much as I have. That really isn't how drip line is intended. It is best to more run a main line, have some more branching off of that, because you can see it just is not conducive to being able to take the tight curves that I'm trying to have it do. So I'm gonna take all this out. We're gonna reuse it. I'm not gonna throw it out. Even though it has some emitters already in it, I think I'll be able to easily enough use those in the different pockets we're gonna take it, and we'll hopefully have a much better setup this year. What I've done now is taken all of it out, and I've laid it out in a straight line. Now, if you let a lot of the drip line set out in the sun a little bit, it becomes slightly soft and a little bit of warmth and more malleable, so it's easier to work with. It's just kind of a tip that I've learned that I'm sure I heard it somewhere else, and it's true. If you just let it sit a little bit in the sun, even if you buy a new roll of it, let that sit in the sun before you really start unrolling it and working with it, it will be easier to work with. So what I want to do now is start fishing this line in behind as one line all the way, and I'm gonna have an emitter at each boxwood. So that's what I want to start by doing, and that will be my main line throughout the back of the bed. And then I can run lines off of it. Also, what I will do is at the corner of this building, I will use a little piece to actually cut the line and make a nice 90-degree angle, as opposed to trying to make a corner that could cause a kink. Anywhere you could cause a kink, you want to put in some type of little piece that will be an angle piece, which I'll show you those up here. I buy them just kind of in bulk. Here's like a 90-degree angle. And this is going to now just be able to cut the line and put it around a corner so it makes that corner perfectly and doesn't kink the drip line. You can get T pieces, I'm sure they're in here somewhere. You can even just get ones if you make a cut and you don't mean to, you can put it back together with one. You can buy these in bulk, here's a T. And what's nice about drip line is it's really forgiving over time. Separately, I buy emitters, and these are the pieces that go into the drip line, and I'll show you installing these. And these ones are adjustable, which I really like. So I can pick how many gallons an hour it allows out, and it has quite a wide range. So that's really nice, because then you can put these in and you don't have to pick each emitter to have a specific amount. You can just change the dial on it and you can kind of use them for whatever. So what I'm gonna do now is run this line back behind for each boxwood and then run lines off of it. And this will be a much better place to start for the year. And I'm glad I'm actually getting to it before the plants fill in. You can see I have the drip line ran all the way now in the back. It was really simple this time of year to pull it behind all the plants. Soon these peonies will become large shrubs. It will take up a lot of space and you'd be breaking a lot more things. This time of year, I don't worry about stepping in there. I can see the plants emerging and I don't need to, worry as much. So if we come up here, I'm gonna show at a corner what I'm gonna do. Here's a corner of the building and I know it's gonna be shadow here, but if I pull up my piece, this is exactly where I want that corner to make a 90-degree angle, which this hose does not naturally do. So even though it looks like you shouldn't do this, all you want to do is go in with your nippers and make one cut. Super easy. And now I can put in my 90-degree angle. And so again, you have to make sure you get the right size for whatever size hose you're using, but you can just actually fit these on here and then it will come right up to the corner and it will just make a 90-degree for the hose to keep on going the other side of the shed. So it's actually a super simple way. And now you can see already that I have some emitters in here since this is being pre-used, but I'm really not worried because they're gonna be close to plants. All of them are. Like there's another one right up there and it's already close to those lilies. So I just wanna make sure the plants I'm worried about, like the boxwood, certain perennials that I'll have to take maybe another piece of hose to, are gonna be covered. So I'm gonna set up this angle, get everything going, and then we'll kind of see what emitters we need to add. When installing emitters or making sure they're at where you want, you also want to be able to keep the hose in a place where the emitter is going to be putting the water directly where it needs to be. So in this case, there's an emitter already here from where the hose was previously, but you can see my plant roots are going to be all the way up here in my plant itself. So I want to pull this hose up. Now to do that and keep it in place, I just use U-pins. So you can use landscape U-pins. I get the ones that are galvanized, so hopefully they won't rust, but then you can pull this up, put one in place, and that keeps your hose exactly where you want it. Because naturally this hose is going to want to kind of curve and bend a little bit. But now, when you use these U-pins, you can just put it exactly and so it stays. Keeping the water on each plant is what the efficient part of this is. So up here, I need to put an emitter in. So if we look here, there's no emitter for this boxwood. So you can use a couple tools. You can get just a punch. This is going to have a little sharp end piece on it underneath this rubber, and that end piece will actually punch a hole. These are okay and they work really well. I found that this one online is actually really nice because it's like a little punch gun and it makes that hole right in the hose wherever you want it. You just punch, it makes the hole, you release, and you have this nice hole right where you want to put an emitter. So like I said, I'm using adjustable emitters where I can actually come up to them and adjust the amount of water that they release. Otherwise, you can buy ones that do 1 gallon an hour, 2 gallon an hour, and decide wherever you want and what plant you want them to release, how much they do. Otherwise, all you do is you punch them in, they snap in place, and they're ready to go. So that's how easy drip line really is to install. It's just these few little tools and the few tricks that really make a difference. So I'm gonna keep this one with a U-pin right up here, and that way I can just put it down in place, and you can see right here, the emitter is gonna be right where I want it to be, releasing water right to the roots, shaded, efficient, it's really a nice way to water things. The view doesn't look different, but if you listen really closely, you can hear water coming out. So I want to go up to some of the areas and kind of show you what's going on. So if we come down in here, we're going to see that right here is an emitter. And this is one that is pre-done, so it lets out about 2 gallons an hour, and you can see how slowly that's coming out. And it's coming out right by these boxwood roots, which is what I want. It slowly saturates that soil. And if we come on down the line, we can see another one I just installed, which is right here on this boxwood. And this is one of those adjustable ones. So I can turn this one as it's going, and I can actually adjust how much comes out. I can actually turn it off completely if I want to. So there it is, off completely, which is really nice. Or if I feel like during the summer something's going to need more, I can open it up more. So it just is kind of a nice way to have adjustments on them and allow them to do what they need to do. I'm going to leave it a little open. What I'm doing right now is just testing it. So I'm just turning it on. I just hooked it up to the hose at the end, and I'm just going through and making sure everything's working, seeing if there's any holes in the line, if all of them that I just installed are working. And you can see they're slowly starting to create their wet areas. Again, we're really early in the spring. It is super cool out still, so nothing is really needing water. We're getting spring rains, but this is so in the dead of summer, when we start not having as much rain. And when all these plants are filled in, I don't have to try to fish this through, and all the work is done early. So the only thing left is now, eventually I may want to run some smaller lines down to some of the perennials that are just beginning to pop out. And that I'm going to wait a little bit on to see for sure what I'm going to want to do. You can even hook this up in places, and if you have flower pots, you can run little lines up to those from back behind and hide the line. It really does work well. So one of the last things I want to do today is a couple maintenance things on my yard. Now, lawns can be a contentious issue anymore. And even for myself, it sometimes is this contention I have within my own mind of knowing a lawn and a yard and grass is really an economical drain on the environment, on sometimes the wallet. It takes a lot of energy, and it doesn't really give anything back to the natural resources. You know, a mown lawn is not good necessarily for pollinators, but it does serve a purpose in being able, when my nieces and nephew come over, to play outside, to have. But it's also, in my case, something that I already have quite a bit of. Not that I installed it, but it was always here on the farm. So I do no chemicals on it. I do no treatments on it. All I do is I keep it really long when I mow. I never mow below 3 inches because I think the best thing you can do for grass is just to keep it as healthy as you can without synthetics, without fertilizers, without chemicals. And so I'm just trying to create a healthy ecosystem in it. And to do that, I do use some organic fertilizer on it a couple times a year if I can. So a lot of times I'll just use an Espoma. There's lawn food, which is kind of a nice spring one. A lot of times I'll use even the corn gluten, and I use it more as a fertilizer than a weed preventer. My grass has some clover in it. It has other things that come into it and grow. I don't eradicate them. I don't spray them. It's just a natural thing. It's gonna happen. And it's one of those things that slowly over time, I wanna keep adding more prairie, more environmentally friendly plants, but I can't do it all at once with this amount of yard. On farmsteads, there's large yards, and you can't just in one year, economically even, afford to just switch them over to something else. So eventually I'd love to do some no-mow grasses. I'd love to do some prairie grasses. I just recently planted a buffer strip of natural, eco-friendly, native prairie around my yard in the field. So slowly over time, I'll probably hopefully do more of that. But until then, creating a healthy lawn is what's gonna keep it thriving, because I don't water it. I think that's just, for me, as a waste. It's too big a yard and I don't see the purpose. So it goes dormant in the summer and goes dry. But what I am gonna do is do a little bit of feeding right now. These are the 2 items I'm using. You can see they're pretty simple. They're all organic. I feel good about using them around my pets, around animals. You always wanna put them on when it's gonna be raining, hopefully like in the next day or 2. So we do have some nice rain, it looks like, coming up, and that's why I am applying these now. And you know, I find the corn gluten, it does prevent, I think, some weeds. You know, dandelions, while they can be pollinating plants and help for pollinators, they're also not the best feeding system for a lot of pollinators. So I usually use these 2 as a mixture in some of the yard, just in certain parts. And it's just a nice way to kind of help it be healthy, give it a, kind of like when we give ourselves vitamins. That's a lot of times what I'm doing for the yard here too, is just giving it a boost. And you can see I have not mown it yet. I try to hold off mowing my yard as long as possible in the spring. So I like to let it get shaggy, get long before I really give it a cut. And I find keeping it longer all year long is really what kind of helps it. what's nice is it can go in any broadcast spreader. You just will change the dosage depending on the spreader you have to the back of the package. Otherwise, even though I have a big yard, I do just walk it. And it's a really simple thing to do. And it just gives it a little bit of a boost, creates a healthy way without anything synthetic. And it's really just a simple, clean, easy thing to put on the spring. So I'm gonna finish this one up and then we'll go look at that urn one more time. So I'm finishing up and I wanted to just show you one final time what this was gonna look like. I'm putting the top on it. I had help moving on the bottom, so don't worry. And now if I put on the top, it just finishes it off completely and it's perfect. It's a really fun piece, and this is exactly what I love to do in the garden, is have pieces that kind of just seem out of place. I live in Iowa, I live on a farm. They make no sense, and that's the fun of it. And you can see it really helped that I had a level base first. So making sure this piece of cement, and I put a little bit of soil back in between that and the sod itself. But you can see having this level piece, it sticks out a little bit more over here than it does over there. That's why you want to do it. The land is not level here, especially where I live. I'd love to level it out, but that's for another video. But what this did was create an even space that this could sit upright, be level, so if I see it from the house, see it from a different part of the yard, it will be correct as opposed to topsy-turvy. So it's a really fun thing, but overall today we got a lot done. Started by leveling off this piece on the bottom so this urn could sit here straight. Went on and did the drip line, and I'll still work some more on the drip line, so follow my stories and I'll show you how I attach more pieces to go to various perennials if I need to, or I may attach a piece to go to a flower pot I have on the other side of the shed. And we then did a little bit to the lawn and finished with this all finished up. So I hope you can see that, you know, my garden, it's all done by me. I just sit out here and I figure this stuff out, and that's what a garden is. We learn along the way. Every year I'm learning things, changing things like the drip line. This year should go a lot better with it. And I hope you learn too. So as always, share these videos around because of course it helps me, but it helps others too see that gardening can be done in all shapes, sizes, all places, no matter where you live, it can work for you. So happy gardening. Let's go get at it.